Have you ever felt like you really understood a place, but then you look closer and realize it's just way more complex, maybe even contradictory?
Absolutely. And fascinating because of it.
That's exactly where we're going today. We're doing a deep dive into modern China. Not just confirming what we think we know, but really digging out some surprising, nuanced insights. The mission, for you listening, is basically a shortcut to get you properly well informed so you can understand the why behind the news.
And we're drawing from some excellent material excerpts from China. Pragmatism, paradox, and progress. It really peels back the layers on a country full of, well, compelling contradictions. It pushes past the simple stories.
Yeah, it really does. Okay, let's jump right in with what I found really striking, how the source just tackles some big misconceptions head on. The first one, it's a biggie for us in the West, I think, this idea of China as this, centrally controlled machine, especially the economy. But the source argues pretty strongly that that's not quite right. Politically centralized, yes, but the economy. Actually, remarkably decentralized.
That's such a key point.
It says local mayors are the ones really pushing reforms, driving innovation.
Yeah.
Almost like CEOs competing within this huge national company. It's this massive internal competition.
And that's where it gets fascinating, isn't it?
Mhm.
Because that image of total top-down control is so common outside China. But this reveals a different kind of engine, fueled by local drive, which raises the question, how does that kind of model, all that local competition, actually hold together under one central political system? You'd think it might fly apart.
Great question. And it leads straight into the next misconception the source tackles, this idea that authority in China means sort of blind obedience, just doing what you're told.
Right.
The book says, look, there's definitely deference to authority, yes, but it exists alongside this incredibly strong, self-starting, entrepreneurial spirit. It's not really a contradiction. It's presented more as a pragmatic trade-off. People basically make a deal, okay, some submission, but in return, stability, security, and crucially, the chance for prosperity. It's like a core societal bargain.
So these aren't just small misunderstandings. They're fundamental blind spots for Western observers.
I think so.
Why is understanding that specific trade-off deference plus entrepreneurship
hmm
so vital for getting a real sense of China's economy and daily life? What does that bargain mean for, the average person?
Well, it means it's not about just following orders. It's about finding ways for individual initiative to thrive within certain boundaries. This tension, political control versus economic freedom, social deference versus individual drive, it's what leads to this really unique hybrid identity the source talks about.
Ah, the hybrid identity.
Yeah. So on one side, you've got an economy that acts fiercely capitalist. The source describes intense ambition, crazy competitiveness, a real focus on money. It's like raw economic energy. You can almost feel it.
Mm-hmm.
But then you look at the social side, and the book says it's deeply socialist in feeling. You see that in the importance of community groups, free classes for seniors, people doing hobbies together, this strong emphasis on harmony.
It's amazing, really.
It is. It's like two different operating systems running at the same time.
And how do those two seemingly opposite forces actually interact? I mean, does the source give examples of where that capitalism and the socialist fabric might clash or create tension for people caught between
Yeah.
them? Because that seems like where the really interesting human stories would be.
That's a sharp point. It doesn't spell out specific clashes as much, but the tension is definitely implied, especially when you look at the competitive spirit it describes.
Okay.
It's not just business, it's everywhere. Education, too. Ferocious. And here's a detail that really jumped out at me comparing it to the US.
What's that?
Unlike here, where competition can be a bit hidden or downplayed. The book says in China, it's often right out there. Public, explicit. They post rankings, best to worst, for businesses, for students.
Wow. Like a national leaderboard?
Exactly. It sounds intense. And historically, this ties back to meritocracy, right?
Right.
That Confucian ideal. Upward mobility through exams, through hard work, achievement based on ability.
A cornerstone for centuries.
But here's the catch the source highlights. That traditional meritocracy, it seems to be eroding now. The book notes that connections guangxi often matter more today than pure ability in a lot of areas.
That's a really significant observation. If meritocracy is eroding, how does the source suggest that shift, where connections become more important, actually affects things like, say, social trust or just daily life? What happens when that foundation starts to wobble?
It definitely leaves you wondering about the long-term effects. The source implies that tension, but maybe let's step back a bit. Look at the bigger picture of reform and growth. To understand now, You really need to look back.
To Deng Xiaoping.
Exactly. Starting around 1978, that pragmatism we mentioned, it really kicked into high gear. The famous open up and reform policy,
Right.
that led to huge changes, freeing up agriculture, creating those special economic zones, Shenzhen being the famous one, like a test lab for capitalism. And then a massive step, joining the WTO in 2001.
Each step unleashing a new wave of activity.
Totally. Torrents of it. And a key concept the source uses to explain this incredible growth is the mayor economy.
Ah, yes, that's crucial.
It's almost counterintuitive. Local leaders weren't just waiting for orders from Beijing, they were actively, fiercely competing against each other for GDP growth, for investment, for innovation.
Like internal rivals.
Yes. This intense competition drove incredibly fast industrialization, urbanization. The incentives were all about pushing innovation, pushing growth. It was like a national sprint.
But connecting that back, this mayor economy, while amazing for production, also helps explain a key imbalance now, right?
How so?
The source points out that China got incredibly good at making things the supply side, but it still struggles with domestic consumption, the demand side. Why haven't the incentives shifted more towards boosting demand? And what are the risks if that supply-demand gap doesn't close? It feels like a fundamental weakness.
It absolutely does. And speaking of the supply side, industrial policy comes up too.
State support.
Exactly. The source looks at how government backing was critical for building up industries like EVs, solar, semiconductors, making them globally competitive.
Was it efficient, though?
Well, the book is frank about it. It says the initial push was often inefficient, even wasteful sometimes. But ultimately, it worked. It got those industries launched and scaled up.
So a sort of whatever it takes approach initially.
Kind of. But the source also adds a crucial caveat. Once these markets are mature, the state needs to step back. Let private competition take over for efficiency.
Makes sense.
And tied into all this are some interesting cultural attitudes. There's this paradox. Short-term versus long-term thinking.
How does that play out?
You see incredible long-term patience, like families investing in education over generations or the political system's continuity. But then in business, there's this real short-term impatience, a short, flat, fast mentality, quick decisions, rapid execution, wanting results now.
That's a fascinating contrast.
And there's another cultural note, quite poignant. The source, through Kiyu's observations, touches on a kind of nostalgia.
Nostalgia for what?
For the past, specifically the 1980s. The idea that today's richer, more modern China might have lost some of the unity, the tight-knit community feel of those poorer, earlier days. It hints at the trade-offs of rapid development. Progress has costs.
Those cultural nuances are so important. They're not just background noise. They really shape policy and everyday life. How do you see that mix, the long-term view plus the short-term drive, and that tension between wealth and lost community? How does that shape the challenges China faces going forward?
Well, I think bringing it all together, the big picture from the source is just really compelling. China's story seems to be one of constant pragmatism, surprising economic decentralization underneath the political structure, and this truly unique hybrid identity.
Capitalist in practice.
Right, but socialist in spirit or maybe in its social fabric, it really defies any simple label.
And the core message, looking ahead, based on this material, future growth seems to hinge on a few big things. They've got to reform those incentives, really boost domestic consumption.
That demand side issue.
Exactly. Keep the innovation engine running. And maybe the toughest part, find that balance between individual ambition, that drive we talked about, and overall social harmony.
So thinking about everything we've just unpacked, those deep historical roots, the Confucian echoes, the mayor economy, the social trade-offs, the current economic pressures, here's something for you to think about. How might China's ongoing effort to square that circle, balancing individual prosperity with social cohesion, how might that not only reshape China itself, but also change its role on the world stage? Definitely something to mull over.